In front of me I have the Sigma 150 to 600mm lens, and if you're looking for a super telephoto for your wildlife photography, then today I'm going to give you 5 reasons why this telephoto lens is the best to buy. This has been my wildlife photography lens for a year and a half now, and I bought it with my own money. This video is not sponsored in any way, and these are my honest opinions on this lens. If you enjoy this video, please hit that like and subscribe if you want to see more, and without further ado, let's get into the 5 reasons the Sigma 150 to 600mm lens is a great lens for wildlife photography. Now, the obvious reason why this lens is incredible for wildlife photography is the zoom. It can go from 150mm all the way to 600mm, meaning you have an incredible reach. Now, as a wildlife photographer, often you will struggle to get close to your subject, and if you're at a 300mm range, you can get relatively close, but quite often, especially with small birds, just not close enough, or at least that's what I've found in my experience. With this lens, you can zoom in as much as you want and fill the frame even if you're shooting a small subject. It means you're not going to disturb the wildlife when you're out doing wildlife photography either, because you don't have to get so close. You don't have to force yourself to get within 100 meters of the wildlife. You can sit back and let the wildlife do their thing naturally, undisturbed. And the final reason why the length is great is compression. The longer your focal length, the more compression there is between the background and the subject, meaning you get more bokeh. So a longer zoom will give you blurrier backgrounds in an image. Now, for a lens this size, you should be expecting a lot of weight. However, the Sigma 150 to 600mm contemporary lens comes in at 1.8 kilograms, which is the lightest super telephoto lens on the market. Closely in competition with the Tamron at 1.9 kilograms, however, this one is the lightest. That is partially due to its plastic build. However, this is not a problem that I've found. I've found that the weight reduction due to the plastic build has been much more advantageous than the actual damage to the lens. You see, my lens is looking very, very nice. As I said, I've had it a year and a half, and yet the plastic is not scratched in any way. Some of the rubber components are getting a bit dirty. They've got some watermarks where it's got drips on it, but that can be washed off. So the quality of this lens is not compromised by the weight reduction. And another reason why it being light is great is that you are going to be carrying this lens around. With wildlife photography, you have to go to areas you can't access in vehicles necessarily, and you will be having to carry this on your back or around your neck, and it being light makes that process a lot simpler. Now, this lens has 3 stabilization modes. There's a stabilization mode for panning, when you're going from side to side. There is a stabilization mode which generally stabilizes everything, and then the final one is no stabilization. Now, I use the general stabilization a lot, and this really helps out because with a long zoom, the tiniest of movements appears huge on the other end. And so if you can stabilize this lens within the lens, then it means you're going to get a much steadier shot. Whether you're videoing or you're taking a photo, you will see everything a lot smoother, making the process easier. And if we pair that with the light build of this lens, you end up with a camera setup that you can hand hold. Now, unless I'm shooting video, I generally use this lens handhold because I find I have a lot more control of it and stabilization isn't an issue. Now, in a low light scenario or times like that, then yes, a tripod comes in handy when you have to use a lower shutter speed. But in daylight, doing wildlife photography, you will see me using this handheld most of the time. Now, on the side, similarly to where the stabilization switch is, you have a focus mode switch. And this switch means you can have autofocus, manual override, or manual focus. This is great because normally they have an autofocus and a manual focus and you have to use one or the other, but on this lens, the manual override means that you can use it on autofocus while overriding it with manual if you want to. Now, I generally shoot with autofocus. If a bird is sitting on a tree, I'll let the camera focus on it. The issue comes when the bird is in deep branches, and if it's a really cool bird or you want that type of shot, then you're going to have to manually focus it because the camera will just try and focus on the branches in the front. That is where this setting becomes very useful. And the 5th reason is the lock on this lens. There is a lock, meaning that the lens won't creep. Now, if you're hiking a long distance and doing wildlife photography, without this lock, the lens will slowly creep out. As you can see, it's very gradual, but the lens is creaking out of the socket, and this means that you're going to end up with your lens swinging around at full extension. We don't want that. As a wildlife photographer, it's just irritating. It's also bad for the lens. This lock, however, on the side, you can clip it across, and now that lens will not creep, meaning that your camera is safer and you're not going to have an enormous lens swinging by your side on a wildlife hike. So they are my 5 reasons why this lens is great for wildlife photography. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.